This is the WGBH Forum Network.
Okay, forgive me for being a little formal, but the first thing I'll tell you is that we are recording tonight for the web, so that this event and this talk will be made available for folks who couldn't make it here tonight. So we are going to pass around a microphone when we do the Q&A discussion part so that we can get your comments recorded as well. And certainly if there are things you want to say off the record, you can wait until sort of the official event is over, and I'm sure that Leora, from what I've seen already, is happy to sit and talk with you about stuff. So I'll back up and tell you that I'm Jacqueline Friedman. I'm the program director here at the Center for New Words. For those of you who aren't familiar, are any of you not familiar with us? I can skip the spiel. Turn off your cell phones. What?
Do the spiel.
You want to do the spiel?
Yeah. The Center for New Words is important.
Okay. We are an organization dedicated to creating spaces and places where women's words matter. We are an outgrowth of what was New Words Bookstore for 27 years, and now we are a nonprofit program center producing all manner of events for women and girls in writing. And just a few things coming up. Next Thursday, right here, same time, same station, we're hosting Sarah Santilles, who has written a book called Taught by America, which is about her experience with Teach for America, teaching a group of elementary school students in Compton where there were no books, no resources, and sort of what's really happening inside the educational system. And what an awakening it was for her as, you know, a young white woman straight out of Yale, sort of with all these ideals, and to be confronted with the realities of what's really going on and what needs to be done in the education system. Hi, come on in.
This is my second cousin.
Welcome. First cousin once removed. So that's next Thursday. And then Wednesday, October 5th, is our next Feminism and Dessert discussion. So this is our monthly first Wednesday discussion where we have a talk about a topic and we provide you with dessert. And, you know, like, what's wrong with that? So this month's topic is going to be Boobs on the Tube. We're going to be discussing women and the new television season. So, you know, I'm sure we'll be talking about Gina Davis and the Commander-in-Chief, and I'm sure there's lots of other stuff to talk about. So make sure to be here for that. Last month we had a really amazing discussion about cross-generational feminism. We had like 25 women in here. It was such a dynamic discussion, so it was really fun. So definitely come and check that out. And then, what? That's here, also at 7 o'clock. It's the first Wednesday of every month. And then October 16th, which is a Sunday night, we're hosting Ivan Coyote, who is a genderqueer short story writer, and Ivan's work is so beautiful. And Anna Camilleri, who is a gender theorist, who edited the anthology Brazen Feminine, whose new book is called Superheroes, Saints, and Sluts, I think. No, that's the subtitle. It's called Red Light, and it's about female icons from the Virgin Mary to Wonder Woman to, like, Beyonce, you know. What is it about women being iconic, and what can we learn from that? So they're going to be together, and that's going to be a really awesome event, and that's actually at Spontaneous Celebrations in Jamaica Plain, Sunday, October 16th. If you want to know more about any of these things, pick up that purple brochure over there. Would you hold one up, Stacey? Thank you. And also be sure to sign up on our email list. We send you a weekly reminder of what's coming up, and we never give your information away. We try and be brief and social so that you'll enjoy getting emails from us. And that's about it for me. If you have other questions about the center or anything else going on here, feel free to chat with me afterwards. And now I get to introduce Leora. Leora Skocon-Smith spent her childhood traveling between New York and Israel. As an adult, she has established herself as a powerful writer and activist, earning grants from the New York State Council on the Arts and the PEN American Center, publishing work in such journals as Persea and the Sarah Lawrence Review, and co-founding the Emmett Till Anne Frank Program, a multicultural educational initiative for Afro-American and Jewish youth in Brooklyn. And now she is gifting us with her first novel, the lush story of an American girl coming of age in pre-1967 Israel, her personal and sexual upheaval mirrored by the beauty and turmoil of Jerusalem and the Palestinian world beyond its borders. And here to share it with us, Leora Skocon-Smith. Thank you.
Wow. First of all, just thank you for having me. And I do know that this region is on fire right now, and I hope we'll all talk about it. after this. As you also know, it's very hard to read an excerpt and find an excerpt that can stand on its own. But I think I did, and you'll be the judge of that. And I think all you need to know is that you're in an Israel before the 67 war. The girl is 14 years old. Her mother is a native, was born in the old city of Jerusalem. But at this time, Jews were not permitted into the old city. You just sort of have to do like kind of a reversal of what's going on now. And it was really the Jordanians that had it. And I think that's hopefully all you need to know. As the bus neared Jaffa Gate, the Arabic women in black chiffon taras with silver-threaded shawls around their shoulders formed a line at the door. I rubbed my nose at the salty sweat smells of their thick embroidered habaras, their heavy black stockings. The bus slowed down to let the Arabic women off at the entrance gate. Suddenly, my mother got up from her seat, as if she saw someone waving to her from on top of the incomprehensible stones that were forbidden to us. "Look," she said, nudging me. "See the gate? It used to be that we could go into the old city before the War of Independence. My father's store is in there, but they bombed it now." "Yeshevet bavakasha, sit down, please," the bus driver said, glaring at my mother from his rear-view mirror. "Shama, ze bet mishuganim? Over there. Is that the house for the crazy?" my mother asked him sweetly. Then she walked forward and tapped him on the shoulder. "Bavakasha, please," she said, pointing to Jaffa Gate and to a cluster of goats and beggars below us. "Pull, here, I go too, with my daughter." I deeply apologize for this. I'm missing a page. I'm really sorry. Oh, thank you. My mother looked back at Ivy as I stood up. My sister was brushing her long hair. "Ivy, you go ahead, darling," my mother shouted to her. "Liana and I, we will get off here and meet you back at the house." Looking up from the dry, desolate soil after going down the steps with my mother, I could see the back of my sister's head, her long hair inside the autobus as it took off again. My mother pulled at my hand. "Now, only be still, Liana. Be quiet and walk with me," she said. "Talk to no one, and then we will be safe. My dress is American, and your face, my Liana, is American enough for both of us. Liana, this way." We kept walking towards the guarded Jaffa Gate, sucking in our bellies, making ourselves small. We stopped and stood on the dangerous strip of border. "Rega chad, wait a minute, wait." One Arab guard pulled a machine gun up his shoulder. His hand went out in the queue between the last Arabic woman and my mother. "You, wait," he said. "May I help you?" my mother said to him. "Is this Israel I am in? But I want to be in Jordan." "Americani?" he asked. "Of course," my mother said. She opened her purse and took out a tourist map and a tiny brownie camera she had bought for our trip to Masada next week. Was it the brownie camera, my mother's smile, the American sundress? It was a full cycle of excitement that my mother and I lived in for 10 or 15 minutes as we held on to each other, oblivious of any other passage of time that might forbid us our happiness. We got by the guards, crossing onto a busy quarter on the other side of the border. The blood rushed through my head. Buoyant with light and color, the market street throbbed, the swell of bursting activity and fruit-filled aromas mesmerizing. Outside tents and stalls, fabrics hung on clotheslines. Donkeys and goats were tied to stone posts. Inside the rows of stalls there were beautiful things, brooches, necklaces, and earrings made of tarnished silver, purple and black smock dresses, strips of satin and lamb's wool, and olive wood religious artifacts. Could I describe it? Stone and semen, a smell of bowels and body that was sweet. Here was a place nothing mattered but the senses. I was swept into a numbing paradise of things, standing with my mother. I forgot what we had done to get there, the Arabic guard station, the bus ride. I forgot that we had left Ivy alone on a bus, and even that Doda Esther was waiting for us, preparing our Friday night meal. Yes, yes, my mother said, wanting to take a taste of the many sweet Arabic cakes and to buy some of the tarnished jewelry and bring it back home with us, or some of the embroidered cloths. What war? Her eyes seemed to ask. Let us stand here and look, she said. Quiet, though, darling. All right? Yes, I said. We walked further into the center of the city, down the smooth stone ladders. My mother had my hand, and the air was scents. Fried fish, figs, Turkish candy rolls, roasting seeds, and lemon juice. Tov, my mother said, everything I will buy for you, Liana, like before. And what else will we have this evening, madame? She took out a Kleenex and began dabbing at her lips, trying to spread her lipstick on them because its color had faded. There was a dignity to my mother I didn't see in the heavy hours at 1 Metadula Street. She was young again and walking through the past. Wolf Silberstein's daughter, with the gifts in her room from all the different parts of Europe my grandfather had business affairs in, who inhaled the fragrant, saturated air and smiled with her big lips and teased. She grabbed at the fingers and held my hand tightly. She pulled me along by her side, and we squeezed past 4 or 5 other Arabic guards, drinking water from their metal canteens in a dirty vestibule. A souk that continued winding around some limestone columns where the smell of rosewater drifted on the air and the smoke of roasting seeds around a bend. Shelves and pantries inside old shops held glass storage jars full of colored spices and honey, eggplant slices and jars of thick olive oil and whole red peppers. I watched the cleansing of the Arabic houses in the distance, rugs beaten outside painted wooden balconies by large women holding straw brooms that looked like rackets. I hear there is a war, my mother called to a turbaned merchant standing in front of a stall of hanging silks and satins. How foolish for us. I used to get these when I was a little girl. The man nodded at my flirting mother. Her brown eyes coyly blinked. Here now, Liana, you will be all right, she said. But of course you are uncomfortable here. We will find you a habara to wear, I am certain. Now you are good. Very well. Now look here. She stopped and picked up one foot, flapped at the torn sole of one of her flats. Look at what the rocks do to the shoe, and these children can get hurt running. There are so many accidents here. I read in the papers. I've read about a lot of these boys. In the hospital, do they go? I don't know, Mom, I said. Uh-huh. She clucked her tongue and thrust her lips out, setting her foot back down and crossing her arms. But gradually she took off again. I followed her close behind, pushing through wild flowers and cacti that sprouted between slabs of corroded cobblestones in an expanse of vacant courtyards. This section here is like before the war, my mother said. Now it's deserted. I am not afraid to come into these sections. That house over there must have been built by architects from Amman. Your grandfather took in commissions for them. They were in business together. I watched her fingers as she tossed the loose curls of her hair. It was calming. I was giving in to her as she talked knowingly about the strange places we walked. The stained stone walkway stretched under a vaulted ceiling, and my mother and I walked through on the cobblestone. Thick eucalyptus trees growing up through the walk broke up the sundown. Bits of light scattered in. The cobbled walkway took us through an ancient hall of columns, and when we came out, we had arrived at a group living quarters where there were ritual public bathhouses, and tombs. 2 small nuns in black bowed in front of some ruins, and a priest with a scarlet-red Russian turban was smoking a cigarette beside a church door. He saw us and crossed the vestibule. "I am American, Christian. Does it matter?" my mother shouted to him. But he waved us along, away from him. Turning another corner, we walked under an arch outside the church walls, and I kept my head low and was quiet. Some more Jordanian soldiers were chain-smoking by squalid piles of tossed garbage and metal scraps. We quickened our pace, entering a walled quarter with wide arches of rosy stone and flat, single-story rooftops that looked older than the Roman columns. Men in white turbans, all staring at us, padded barefoot through the courtyard gardens full of marigolds and tamarind trees. We soon drifted into vaulted souks below the Ottoman towers, towards blaring taped Arabic music, which sounded like a swarm of bees. A crowd was at the next bazaar, and I came to move more confidently next to my mother, believing my appearance not to be so foreign anymore. And it was fun, had become, or was becoming fun. But I didn't know exactly why, treading through the thick, seductive air, I felt this way. "You don't have to think so hard," my mother said to me. "We'll eat something soon. We'll drink ginger ale, maybe." Early evening had made the air cool. Kerosene lamps were burning by doorways. There were even a few electric lamps under the tents of vegetables and nuts. Where the moon rose over the limestone ruins, the borders and boundaries were almost invisible. Shoppers were gathered around wheelbarrows filled with crates of fruits and vegetables, exchanging lira, currency from the Israeli banks. We walked past more Arabic guards, and my mother smiled at them with her big lips. The dense air was filled with the unrelieved perspiration of the men. Their army posts were made of rocks and sandbags. Far in the distant hills, crumbling Arabic houses blurred into a maze of sacred domes and mosques. I could still see the surrounding mounds and hills. Then my mother took a wrong turn. We walked into a blind alley, impassable. There were glazed blue doorways tucked into corners, lining darker, denser passages. I smelled the latrines near the holy sites, toilet holes. Suddenly, we came into an open square. Trash had been left to blow into shreds by the evening breezes. "It was good that you were quiet," my mother said. The refuse didn't bother her, or the squalid stone. "No, we won't be going down where there is no light again. Here there is more light." I had not seen the band of boys approaching us. 6 of them, dark-skinned, teenagers. "Lira, please, Mrs. No speak." One barefoot Arab boy ran up to me. He opened his left hand, flashing a box of brooches and some stones. "Look, Mrs., stones from the Holy Land," he said. My mother grabbed for my hand. "You must be extremely careful here, Liana," she said. "You must do exactly as I say. Do you hear me?" The stench of donkey urine fumed up the alleyway. I looked down and saw what the first Arab boy had been carrying in his other hand. A few plain stones that were wet and crumbly, like old hardened clay. Then 3 other boys circled my mother and me. "Very beautiful stones," the first boy said to me. "I sell to you only. Souvenir." On the top of the Arab boy's shaved head there were scabs, Flies were stuck to his street-dusted nose. The boy coughed. His lungs sounded bad. Clumps of Nescafe powder had stained under his fingernails and hardened on his bad teeth. In the alley, their shredded sleeping cots and broken bicycles lay on the cobbled street. Beyond us, further up on the Jordanian hills, I saw tourist hotels with water sprinklers and carefully gardened flower beds. "Bye, Yelda, girl," the first boy said to me. "Please, please." "Stop," my mother said. "We are not tourists. I was born here. I am Sabri Yelad. Stop this." "These stones may be from where you were born," the first boy said. "Little miss," the boy said to me, coming closer. "Bye, bye." His eyes seductively fastened on me, the same dark brown as the espresso in the Arabic cafes. He showed me the ordinary stones in his hand. "Ooh, ah," he said, like he was offering me gold. "Souvenir, missus. Please buy." The other Arab boy stepped away now and waited for him to finish selling. "How much is it?" I asked the boy. My mother yanked at my hand. "Liana Sheket, for God's sake, Liana." She turned to the boy. "She doesn't know anything," she said to him. "You're not to come near her. Do you understand?" "Lama, why?" he asked. He pointed his dirty fingers at my khaki shorts. "Yelda Shala, AC/DC? Your girl is AC/DC?" The other boys laughed, circling us again, their hands reaching for my mother's pocketbook. "AC/DC," they shouted. "La Yelda, not a girl. La Yelda, not a girl." "That's not nice," my mother said. "I can have the daughter, missus, even if she's AC/DC. Look, look," the first boy shouted, and he started to unzip his shorts. "Shoo," my mother shouted to all the boys. "Yalla, go. You will not touch her. Do you hear me?" My mother lifted me up and began running very fast down the alleyway. She ran through the stone, carrying me under her arm, my legs kicking, and I felt the sphincters in my stomach loosen, as if I was going to heave out and then dissolve. But when she put me down on the ground again, it felt hard, and I was dizzy, standing on it. "Liana," my mother put out her hand to steady me. It felt like a tiny tree that was clasping onto me. "Don't fight me, Liana," she commanded. "You don't understand." "What do you mean?" The pain in my ribs from her hold was subsiding, which brought me only the fact that we were in a hole full of moldering garbage and stone. "One more minute, please." My mother wiped her finger across my face. In my eyes, I said to her, "The dust, get it out." She felt for my eyes with those fingers. Her left forefinger pushed itself into the moist whites, the unsuspecting ball and retina. When she withdrew it, I blinked, stung. She pressed up against my side. In the dark, her breathing was loud and soft, and in my confusion, I looked up at the early moon. I saw some lavender clouds through the crumbling turrets, a swell of moistures and night. The air brought me to a sense of nausea, even disgust and repulsion. Then all shifted into tingle, immersion, excitement, and thrill. "You want some mineral water?" my mother asked me, after a few moments. She bent, kneeling down on the stone. I put my foot flat. Still bent down, she adjusted my sandal buckles. When she stood up, she took hold of my elbow. "I hate these shorts," I said. "Why did you and Esther make me wear these shorts?" "Liana, what has gotten into you?" My mother's hand went up in the air like she was going to slap me, but she stopped and stared at me, her brown eyes widening. "Stop treating me like I'm a baby," I said. "Keep your voice down, Liana. You are a baby if you start up on a street like this. We are not where it is all right just to scream. These shorts make me look like a boy." I started pulling at the shorts' cuffs, as if I could break all their threads, and the two shorts' legs would turn into a skirt. "But you like them," my mother said, watching me. "Didn't you want to wear them?" "I'm not a boy." My mother grabbed my hands and made me stand up straight. Don't be silly, she said. No one thinks you're a boy. These boys, they meant me, perhaps. They think I am AC/DC. I know what it means, I said. It means I'm abnormal. People think I am not a girl. You are mistaken. My mother brought me against her chest, kneeling down on the rough stone. Do you know how much I love you, Liana? Do you know, Liana? How much? How much? The shorts felt heavier when she said that, and they made me sadder, but I didn't tell her. Here is where I lived when I was your age, she said. I wore shorts like this. Do you think you will find it in your heart to walk with me now, my lovely girl Liana, who no one could ever mistake for a boy? We can forget all that just happened. I nodded. She took my hand again. We walked further into a labyrinth of old stone edifices, through the colonnades and the bazaars where other merchants waited, squatting and lighting water pipes and hookahs. She said, "Stop," and we stood still to hear the chanting by a silver-domed mosque. "Oh, look, Liana," my mother pointed to a stand of candies and nuts. "All sorts of sweets, and Doda Esther isn't here to yell at me." "You won?" she asked me. "It is safe." She took me to a stock stand shining with multicolored rolled jelly treats, like a pastel glow of my mother's strange happiness as her eyes glanced through the busy Arab quarter. "How much are these sweets?" she asked the merchant. She let my hand go and took out some lira from her purse. The merchant gave her 2 bags of the candies, and she placed one of the bags in my hand. She lifted up 4 confections made in the shapes of tiny lemons and watermelons and motioned for me to find some to eat from my own bag. I took 3 confections out of my bag and stuffed them into my mouth, chewing, my belly filled with the tart treats, which were heavily sprinkled with granules of table sugar. "Your grandfather is buried up there, on that hill. That is Mount Scopus up there," she said, now pointing to a bushy hill that ascended in the distance. "I am never afraid of this quarter, because I know my father is near me. Do you know how foolish this war is? That is why Safta is so strange these days. I think she is waiting for my father to come back from the dead and sell the new TVs from Tel Aviv to all our old customers in the Arab quarter here. This is how we used to make our living. We're near Dung Gate, near the Western Wall. It's called the Dung Gate because when the British were here, they threw their garbage down from a bridge they built above our houses. When the bridge collapsed, the garbage was still there." She took another Kleenex from her purse and patted her lips again. "Let us go there," she said. "It is nearer to the hill." Then we walked into an enclave of more debris and damp stone, and Dung Gate arched above our heads. We walked under it into the refuse. I looked at the wristwatch on my mother's wrist. It was 7:10. The sun and moon had exchanged places in the sky. I felt the dry dirt under my foot sliding in over my sandals. "Not everything you hear in your grandmother's house is true," my mother said. "My father sent Elazar away, my brother Elazar. Something happened, you see." "What?" I asked her. It was dark where we were walking, and I was getting tired, my teeth beginning to hurt from chewing. "Elazar and I did things we shouldn't have," she said. "2 children, you know, and it was a war. We were so lonely. Doda Esther said if I had children, they would be disturbed because of this." "Because of what?" I tossed the nearly empty bag of sweets into the other refuse and rubbed a finger under my teeth to scrape up the remains of the jellied candy. "Nothing, Liana, nothing," my mother said. "We had this blanket in the basement, and we were always together when the bombings happened. We were very close, my brother and I. Children, they do things." "Like what?" I tried to imagine my mother and her brother together under the blanket playing British soldiers, my mother's younger, naked body full of enchantments. The emerging moon suddenly hurt, shining too soon and brightly. white arrows of light through the forbidden and dank tunnel we were walking through. "Were you kissing?" I suddenly asked. "No, nothing," my mother cried, angry. "Don't ask me things." I bent to pick up some stones, our own souvenirs, and cupping the moist, clay-like limestone in my hand, I put some in my shorts pockets. "I bring you to Israel, and you can see what a normal girl you are, and nothing is wrong with Ivy either." "I want to go back to Metadula Street now," I said. "It's getting too dark and I'm cold. I shouldn't have ever worn these shorts. It's freezing here." "Look, Liana." She pointed to the foot of a small path on the hill. "Do you think there are spirits from the people who died? If so, we can find my brother. Here is the path up to the hill. You see? It is fate that we find this path." I glanced up at the bald zigzag of dry dirt which led to the top of Mount Scopus. "I will climb this hill, I tell you, and I want you to come with me. We will do it together. I will go first." My mother hoisted up her dress, determined. Her large eyes targeted the hilltop, where we could only see some corroded boulders and pine trees sucked of their green. I watched her feet. She wiggled them, tossing her flats off. She took down her stockings, unlatched them from her garters, rolling them all the way down to her ankles, and then, pulling them off, she dropped them in my hand. I held the balls in my palm. "Do you think you can make it?" she asked me. "Put my stockings in your pocket." Stuffing my mother's rolled-up stockings in my shorts pocket, I tracked up the barren path, crouched because if I walked straight, I would lose my balance. My mother's freckled legs, her wide girth and back, were in front of me. Dry dirt kicked back. I shut my eyes so that the dirt wouldn't fly into them. I imagined the face of the lost brother, Eleazar. When I opened them again, my mother was far ahead of me. I took long, leggy strides to the top of the hill where she waited for me, in a quiet filled with moonlight. "Oh, my God, Liana," my mother said, and she knelt where there was more garbage. But this time, gravestones, jutting up from the ground in messy rows, about 50 of them or more, feeble and yellowed like human waste. There were some old gun shells lying here, too. I watched my mother brush her skirt and clear her throat. Then, "Look at you," she said, taking my face in her hands. "You are not even a bit disturbed. Daughter Esther should be ashamed." Wrappers from the Turkish nut candies, foil, and scraps the soldiers had thrown for the stray cats crunched under our feet. There were no shops here, but epitaphs. It was a graveyard, this place, and I started to shake. I rubbed the sleeve of my shirt under my nose and coughed. "Hush," my mother said. "You have caught a cold, I think, but you must be quiet. Do you think I am kidding about the spirit from the dead people we have known? Maybe Eleazar is here to see you now. I am glad I am not a Christian. They do not believe in the invisible world. You see, if a soul was not happy, we say he lived on probation, and he will come back in another body. Do you have a handkerchief, Liana? It's cold in this section. You are right, I am sneezing too." My mother sneezed. There were more abandoned cats in the pine needles. My mother bent, and they went towards her, licking the fingers that had been in so many sweets and scents. "Let's stay here and rest," my mother insisted. I sat down next to her on a boulder under a tiny beam of moonlight. The West Bank hills were only yards away. My mother's eyes turned towards them. "Jordan is there, and the mountains. You cannot see from here. Now I will tell you. It must be that the probation is over. My brother was buried far over there, not here in Jerusalem. I try not to remember. You will understand your mother and not be so angry at her. I know you were struggling. You don't have to come out and say so." I swallowed, but my mouth was dry. There wasn't any more candy inside it. I coughed to moisten my mouth. In the moonlight, there was an edged beauty to my mother. The round woman looked glamorous against the barren debris, the garbage, and the graves. Her bosoms asserted themselves into the stenchful air amid the corrupted stone. Her presence was like a narcotic in this dirty place. The earth rose, aroused, swirls of dust that turned to intoxicating waves of wind and imagination. I envisioned her dancing in one of her silk dresses, her shoes off and her quick feet wild, a rough star of the underground with all her boyfriends. I could see my shadow when I looked into the stone, the throw of moonlight on the graves. I was so small against the large female person who was my mother sometimes, and sometimes this character from the past is sultry and sexy as any character I might read about in the British romance novels left in the closet at 1 Metadula Street. Even in the ugly field of forgotten deaths here, she looked radiant and carnal, her rippling flesh, freckles, and broad, full-lipped face. It was dizzying, death and decay and my mother's perfumed sex smell. When Ivy was born, I was still mourning for Elazar, she said. It is why your sister doesn't like me. She wants no part of being Israeli. The evening wind went through the underside of my sandals like a tongue. My legs were shorter than hers, I thought, and I put my hand under my shirt to feel my breasts. I put my hand to touch the tiny bumps that I hope will make me like her. I studied my mother against the moonlight and the sky, which made this place, like all of Israel, horrible and stunning at the same time. The graves that were strips of brittle stone and the desiccated, naked ground. And suddenly I heard the taunt of Arab boys again inside my head, the awful sting. AC/DC, AC/DC. Liana, really, my mother asked me, what is the matter with you? Thank you.
So if people have questions or comments, we'll just ask that you use the mic so it gets on the recording we're making.
I know it was a lot. Yeah.
I look forward to reading the whole
Thank
novel.
you. Thank you.
Now,
Yeah.
you had said it's not autobiographical.
Well, I had a very intriguing and mystifying mother who was definitely born in the ancient city. You know, that part, I have to say a lot of the feelings were, yeah. And just being, you know, the confusion of what I was, yeah. But I mean, the actual events in the book, if you read further in the book, are things I invented.
Yes.
The Arab boy getting shot. But all these things probably did happen to me when I was 12. And it's very odd for me, too, as we were talking before, because we weren't really allowed into the old city at all. And it was very dangerous.
Well, I was very moved by your language and
Thank you.
the relationship, you know, between the two characters and so on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you decide first that you wanted to write a novel and then think about what you wanted to write about, or was this a piece of writing that evolved into a novel?
It was about 700 pages of pieces of writing, to tell you the honest truth, you know. It sort of evolved as I began to mature into an idea of what I really wanted to do with the characters. And then the history of the land became very urgent to me during the wars that began to happen. And somehow the two merged, the personal and I don't know if you call it the political, but I began to feel this sort of urgency about joining them. And it really was, I mean, Grace probably took out 300 pages from the original manuscript. I mean, I really go on and on, you know, so.
Other questions or comments? Well, thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
coming
very
and
welcome.
sharing it with us.
Thank you.